Welcome back. Sioux Falls has played host to a number of regional and national tournaments in the last month and a half, and the town is not done yet. This Friday and Saturday, the NCAA Division I men's hockey tournament comes to the Denny Sanford Premier Center, featuring 3 games over 2 days to determine who from the West Regional will reach the Frozen Four in St. Paul. So for a preview, here's Alex Heinert.
Thanks, Kelly. Yes, there are only 2 weekends left in this college hockey season, with one of the 16 teams left standing just 4 wins away from being crowned a national champion. For a trio of Minnesota programs and one from Colorado, the first step in that title journey begins tomorrow at the Denny. Let's go team by team at the 4 squads making up this year's West Regional, beginning with the overall #1 seed in the tournament, the St. Cloud State Huskies. Bob Motzko's crew won the NCHC regular season title comfortably over preseason favorite Denver and the rest of the field, and they've been one of, if not the best team in the country for much of the season. After a bit of a slide in January that saw the Huskies lose 4 of 7, they've only dropped 2 in their last 16 games to secure their first #1 overall seed in program history. SCSU, one of the most prolific offensive teams in the country, averaging over 3.5 goals per game. That's good enough for 4th in the NCAA. And they do it with depth, both at forward and in defense. There are no 20-goal scorers on this roster, but they've got 5 players with 10 goals or more and 10 others with at least 5 tallies on the season. D-man Jimmy Schultz is a Hobie Baker candidate, while freshman goaltender David Rennick is a Mike Richter semifinalist. Now, despite losing in the Frozen Faceoff title game last weekend, this is a complete team and one of the top picks to win it all. Now, if you remember, last year was a good year for tournament favorites as 3 #1 seeds made it to the Frozen Four. The 4th team to get to Chicago, however, was a 4 seed in Notre Dame, so do not completely dismiss St. Cloud's opening round opponent, Air Force, just yet. After winning Atlantic Hockey's conference tournaments, the Falcons have now reached the NCAA's in consecutive seasons and 7 times in the last 12 years. Plus, they won a game in the tournament as a lower seed last year, knocking off an NCHC team in Western Michigan in the 4-3 matchup in the East Regional. So they won't be intimidated by the stage or by their role as an underdog. Now, it's very true, Frank Saratori's team did not have a difficult schedule this year, as Atlantic Hockey is, with all due respect, the weakest conference in the country, and they still could only muster a 3-way tie for 3rd in the league standings. But injuries really hurt this team early on. They seem to be healthier now than they've been all season. They've gone 7-2-1 in their last 10, and they've got a hot goalie in Atlantic Hockey Tourney MVP Billy Christopoulos. They've never beaten St. Cloud State in 9 tries at the D1 level, though. This would still be a big upset if they pull it off. Either way, you won't want to miss Frank Saratori's post-game press conference. That is guaranteed to be the highlight of your weekend. If that is potentially the best moments of the West Regional, the 2-3 matchup, which takes place on Friday night at 6:30 p.m., should be the best game. Number 6 Minnesota State, number 11 Minnesota Duluth. There was not much to separate these two during the regular season. They split a home-and-home that was spread over 3 months, with UMD winning 3-1 in Duluth over Thanksgiving weekends, and then the Mavs returning the favor with a 1-0 victory in Mankato in January. I mentioned St. Cloud is one of the best offenses in the country. MSU is the best, leading the nation at just under 4 goals per game and ranking 2nd on the power play at over 27%. Critics might say they've padded their stats a bit against a lighter WCHA schedule, but Mike Hastings' team was still a dominant 22-5-1 in conference and played well against the big dogs in non-conference, sweeping BU in Boston and splitting with Duluth and St. Cloud State. WCHA Offensive Player of the Year and Hobie candidate CJ Cease, one of several weapons up front, while Daniel Brickley is one of the country's best defensemen at the back. Now, despite rolling to a McNaughton Cup win as conference regular season champs, the Mavs did stumble in a best-of-3 series at home against 5th seed Michigan Tech in the WCHA tournament semifinals, a defeat that helped keep UND out of the NCAAs. We'll see how the Mavs bounce back from that after a week off against a Bulldog team that is also stinging from a disappointing conference tournament. After a big-time surge in the second half of the season, Duluth went winless at the Frozen Faceoff, losing in the semis to Denver and then in the 3rd-place game to North Dakota by a combined 7-2 scoreline. Those defeats put UMD on the brink of missing the NCAAs altogether, but thanks to a series of events last Saturday night around the country, the Dogs snuck in ahead of Minnesota by 1/1000th of a percentage point in the RPI ratings. And yet, even though they are the last team in, quote unquote, Scott Sandlin's team is still the reigning national runners-up and are as talented as they come, with a number of underclassmen playing starring roles this season. NCHC Rookie of the Year Scott Perunovich led Duluth in scoring this year, while emerging as one of the best offensive defensemen in the country, and sophomore forwards Joey Anderson and Riley Tufte are two of a number of high draft picks in this lineup that can really score. Even though their time last weekend in St. Paul was a bit of a disaster, they had won 7 of their previous 8, with sophomore goalie Hunter Shepard pitching a shutout in 5 of those wins. They are not a team to overlook as the 3 seed in the West. Now, whoever gets out of this region is on the same side of the bracket as the number 4 overall seed, Ohio State, who also, by the way, has Denver to contend with in their region, with Cornell and Michigan, the top seeds, on the bottom half of the bracket. As all 3 NCHC teams are on the top half of the bracket, we already know that we will not have another All-NCHC title game like we did last year. Well, even though UND is sadly not involved, this should still be a great 2 days for local hockey fans to see some of the top teams and players in the country fight it out for a spot 2 weeks from now at the XL Energy Center. Sioux Falls, hey, let's do that hockey this weekend. Kelly, back to you.
All right, great stuff. Thank you, Alex. When we come back, more from Mr. Alex Heinert. He'll check in on North Dakota softball coming up after the break.